Mike Harper never expected a routine garage check to turn into a shocking invasion of his home. Bradley, the overconfident HOA officer, brazenly tried to enter his property, acting as if rules and decency didn't apply to him. But when Rocky, Mike's loyal German shepherd, stepped forward with unwavering courage, everything shifted in an instant. And just wait to see how this tense confrontation unfolded, and why justice in the end triumphantly prevailed. Mike Harper had always prided himself on being a reasonable man. He liked order, routines, and the small comforts of a quiet suburban life. That evening, the air was thick with the heat of a July sunset, the kind of evening that made even a short walk feel like a trek through a furnace. Mike had just finished watering his small vegetable garden in the backyard when he heard the sharp, sudden chime of the doorbell. At first, he thought it might be a neighbor, maybe someone returning a borrowed tool or delivering a package. But when he glanced toward the front window, his eyes froze. There stood a man in an HOA uniform, gloves tucked neatly into his belt, clipboard in hand, and a rigid, almost mechanical expression on his face. The sight alone made Mike's pulse spike. Something about the way the man stood, poised, confident, almost territorial, triggered an immediate sense of alarm. Before Mike could even process the situation, the man moved closer, approaching his garage door with hands ready to open it. Mike's voice rose without thinking. "Hey, stop! That's my property!" The words echoed through the quiet neighborhood, but the man didn't flinch. He merely gave a small shrug, as if shrugging off the very idea of personal ownership, as though the law somehow granted him the right to invade someone else's space at will. Mike's heart pounded in his chest. His mind raced through the possibilities. What is he doing? Does he really think he can just walk in? Each second stretched unbearably, filled with a mix of disbelief and rising fury. The audacity, the sheer boldness of the act sent a wave of anger through him, a raw, unfiltered emotion that made his stomach tighten. This wasn't just a misunderstanding, it was a violation. Someone was attempting to cross a line that Mike had worked hard to define. He stepped outside, fists clenched, trying to make himself appear larger, more intimidating, and perhaps reclaim some control over the situation. "Sir, I said this is private," he barked again, but the official, whose name Mike later learned was Bradley, didn't pause. Bradley's eyes scanned the garage door as if he were studying it for flaws, and his casual posture implied he expected compliance without resistance. It was as if Mike's rights, his very sense of security, were irrelevant in this moment. Anger surged in tandem with disbelief. Mike felt the heat of the day mix with the heat of his frustration, creating a pressure inside him that was almost physical. Every rule, every principle he had believed in, about fairness, respect, and boundaries, seemed to mock him now. How could someone be so confident in their power, so indifferent to the consequences of their actions? The sheer imbalance made him feel small and yet, paradoxically, more determined. Around him, the neighborhood remained eerily still. The usual evening sounds of chirping birds and distant lawnmowers muffled by tension. Mike realized that this was more than a personal affront. It was a challenge to the order he cherished, a confrontation with an authority that seemed arbitrary and unaccountable. His anger was no longer just a reaction. It was a call to awareness, a signal that something had to change. Every instinct in Mike's body screamed at him to act, to protect his home, his space, and his peace of mind. The injustice wasn't abstract. It was immediate, tangible, and galling. And in that moment, as Bradley's hand hovered near the garage handle, Mike's resolve solidified. He would not let this stand. The fire of anger burned steadily inside him, sharp and clear, laying the groundwork for everything that was about to follow. Mike's gaze locked on Bradley's, a mixture of incredulity and determination blazing in his eyes. He was ready to defend his home, not with recklessness, but with the firm, unwavering conviction of someone who knew he was right. The evening had started quietly, almost peacefully, yet in a single heartbeat. It had become a confrontation, one that would test patience, courage, and the very boundaries of personal sovereignty. By the time he took a cautious step closer, the anger had transformed into a focused, almost strategic energy. Mike was no longer just a man caught off guard. He was a homeowner asserting his rights, fully aware that the next moments could define the entire course of the evening. The injustice of the situation had sparked a fire that would not be easily extinguished. Mike Harper's chest felt tight, as though the summer heat had suddenly turned into a weight pressing down on him. His anger from moments before had not dissipated. Instead, it mingled with a rising, gnawing fear. Every step Bradley took toward the garage made the pit in Mike's stomach grow deeper. How could a single man dressed neatly in a uniform and carrying nothing more than a clipboard create such a profound sense of threat? It was almost unbelievable, yet it was happening right before his eyes. Bradley continued to advance, his movements deliberate and calculated. He didn't respond to Mike's shouts or pleas. The official's impassive expression gave nothing away, only confirming that he felt justified in his actions. Mike's mind raced as he realized something unsettling. The law, which should have protected him, seemed distant and ineffective. Bureaucracy, the very system designed to maintain fairness and order, could be twisted into a tool for intimidation, leaving ordinary residents like him vulnerable. The sense of injustice pressed heavily against his ribs, making it hard to breathe. Mike's gaze flicked toward the corner of the yard, and his eyes landed on Rocky, his loyal German shepherd. The dog, normally calm and friendly with neighbors, stiffened instantly. Rocky's ears perked, his hackles raised, and a low, steady growl rumbled in his throat. The intensity of the warning was unmistakable. Rocky wasn't just reacting to an intruder. He was sensing the violation of boundaries, the threat to his family and home. Mike felt a brief surge of reassurance seeing Rocky ready to defend, but it was quickly replaced by helplessness. He understood that while Rocky could protect the property, the situation was far from resolved. He couldn't just rush at Bradley or physically block him. Any sudden move could escalate into complications he wasn't prepared for. Legal consequences, misunderstandings, and the unpredictable nature of such confrontations loomed large in his mind. Mike felt trapped between two forces, the moral rightness of defending his home and the very real constraints imposed by law and society. It was a suffocating feeling, one that made him acutely aware of how vulnerable even the most cautious people could be. Each second seemed to stretch endlessly. Mike noticed the small details around him, The way the setting sun cast long shadows across the driveway, the distant hum of an air conditioner, the faint rustle of leaves in the breeze. Yet all of it felt overshadowed by the tension of the moment. The world continued, oblivious to his crisis, amplifying his isolation. It was a peculiar kind of pain, both emotional and psychological. He was powerless to immediately stop the intrusion, yet fully conscious of the audacity unfolding in front of him. Bradley's hand hovered near the garage handle again. Mike could feel every beat of his own heart, rapid and irregular, echoing the growing turmoil within him. Anger bubbled beneath the surface, sharp and insistent, but it was tinged with fear. Fear not for himself, but for the vulnerability of his property, his sanctuary, and the principles he held dear. He had believed that his rights and his home were secure. Now he felt that those assumptions had been stripped away in a matter of moments. Mike glanced at Rocky again. The dog's eyes were fixed on Bradley, unwavering, filled with the kind of determination that humans often struggled to summon. In that gaze, Mike felt both hope and an added weight of responsibility. He needed to act wisely, carefully, but he could not afford inaction. His mind raced with scenarios, strategies, and the limitations imposed by the law. Yet every option seemed tinged with uncertainty and potential danger. The sense of helplessness pressed deeper. Mike realized that this was not just about a man trying to open a garage door. It was about the imbalance of power, the fragility of ordinary lives when confronted with unchecked authority, and the way fear and anger could intertwine so tightly they became almost physical. He felt the full scope of the injustice, and it was almost unbearable. In the oppressive quiet of that summer evening, with the oppressive heat wrapping around him and Rocky's low growl vibrating in the air, Mike Harper understood what it meant to feel powerless. The law, the rules, the very world that promised fairness, all seemed distant and inadequate. And yet, beneath the fear and pain, a spark of determination lingered, waiting for the moment when it could turn into action. The tension in the air seemed to shift as Rocky, Mike Harper's steadfast German Shepherd, took a deliberate step forward. The dog's posture was confident, commanding, and unwavering, a silent declaration that the boundaries of their home were not to be crossed. Mike felt a sudden, powerful surge of hope. After moments of fear and helplessness, this was the spark he had been waiting for, a tangible sign that he was not alone in defending what was his. Rocky was more than a pet. He was a guardian, a living emblem of loyalty and strength. Mike's heart quickened, but this time with something different. Not panic, but clarity. He realized that Bradley, the HOA officer who had so arrogantly disregarded his protests, had underestimated them both. In that moment, the imbalance of power shifted just slightly, but enough to give Mike courage. The oppressive anxiety that had filled the driveway now mingled with a quiet, steady confidence. There was a chance to act, to reclaim control, and perhaps even to assert the principle that no one could trample on his rights without consequence. He fumbled for his phone, fingers trembling slightly from a mixture of adrenaline and lingering fear. Mike knew the importance of evidence. Every move, every audacious step Bradley took would be documented, not out of spite, but as a record of what had happened, a safeguard against injustice. Holding the phone felt like wielding a shield. It was his way to stand firm within the boundaries of reason and legality. He could capture the situation without escalating it recklessly. Meanwhile, Rocky moved with a calculated quietness toward the garage door. Every muscle in his body seemed to hum with purpose. The dog's intense gaze never left Bradley, who now seemed a fraction more cautious. Though still determined, it was a subtle but powerful reminder that courage and protection came in many forms. Rocky's presence alone conveyed a silent warning. The property was defended, and any intrusion would not go unnoticed. Mike's mind raced with scenarios. He imagined confronting Bradley directly, demanding accountability, but he knew that such confrontation carried risks. Instead, he leaned on the steady reassurance of his companion. Rocky's bravery allowed him to recalibrate his approach. They could respond, assert boundaries, and maintain control without acting impulsively. Hope wasn't just an emotion now. It was strategy, a guiding force shaped by awareness and preparation. As he raised his phone, Mike noticed small shifts in the atmosphere. The once oppressive tension was replaced by a charged expectation. Even the evening breeze seemed lighter, carrying with it the subtle scent of possibility. The shadows cast by the setting sun now framed the scene not as a battleground, but as a proving ground. A place where courage and intelligence could determine the outcome. Mike reflected on what hope meant in moments like this. It was not naive optimism nor the fleeting relief that problems might vanish on their own. It was the clarity that action, guided by reason and fortified by loyalty, could create change. Rocky embodied that hope in every fiber of his being, a silent partner in a high-stakes dance of principle and protection. Bradley, still approaching, seemed to hesitate, if only slightly. Mike recognized the subtle power of presence. Sometimes courage did not roar. Sometimes it simply stood firm, unwavering, and in doing so, shifted the balance of influence. The thought bolstered him further. This wasn't just about preventing a garage door from opening. It was about standing up against disregard, proving that even ordinary citizens could protect their rights with resolve and intelligence. Mike took a slow, steadying breath. His pulse was still quick, but no longer chaotic. Rocky's unwavering focus mirrored the clarity he felt within. The fear that had dominated minutes ago was replaced by the resolve to act with patience and vigilance. There was hope now, tangible and sharp, guiding both man and dog in perfect synchronization. In that charged moment, Mike realized the truth. Hope wasn't passive. It was a call to deliberate, intelligent action. It was the knowledge that the bond between him and Rocky was a force Bradley had misjudged. And most importantly, it was the awakening certainty that they could protect not just their home, but the principles of respect and accountability that defined it. The summer evening had shifted from tension to a sense of charged anticipation. Mike Harper's heart was still racing, but now, behind the pulse of fear and worry, there was a steady drum of resolve. Bradley, the HOA officer who had so brazenly tried to breach his garage, made the fatal miscalculation. He underestimated Rocky. The German Shepherd, a steadfast companion and guardian, had been watching every movement, calculating with an intensity only a loyal protector could possess. As Bradley reached once more for the garage door handle, a low growl rumbled from Rocky's chest, a sound that resonated with authority and certainty. Mike barely had time to react before Rocky sprang forward, moving with controlled power and precision. The suddenness of the action, accompanied by a deafening bark that seemed to shake the very air, startled Bradley into an immediate and unexpected retreat. In the chaos of the moment, the official stumbled, lost his balance, and in sheer panic, leaped over the fence in a desperate attempt to escape the consequences of his audacity. Mike froze for a heartbeat, wide-eyed, absorbing the surreal scene unfolding before him. The sheer audacity of what had just occurred made his breath catch. There, on the other side of the fence, was the man who had tried to trespass, humbled not by confrontation, but by the unwavering courage of a loyal companion. The moment felt almost cinematic, a perfect culmination of tension, strategy, and instinct. A flood of triumph surged through Mike. It wasn't just about a man retreating over a fence. It was a symbolic victory over audacity, over injustice, and over the fear that had gripped him earlier. Rocky stood firmly, tail slightly raised, eyes still locked on the retreating figure, a sentinel embodying the principles of protection, loyalty, and courage. Mike felt a profound gratitude, not only for the immediate protection of his home, but for the reminder of what steadfastness and devotion could achieve. As he lowered his phone, realizing he had captured every moment on camera, Mike's thoughts turned inward. This experience, which had begun with anger and fear, had transformed into clarity and empowerment. He recognized the broader lesson. In a world where rules and authority sometimes fail to protect the individual, courage and commitment can fill the gaps. The law, the bureaucracy, the unchecked confidence of someone like Bradley, they could not overcome the raw, principled dedication of a guardian who truly cared. Mike knelt briefly, placing a hand on Rocky's head, feeling the warmth and steady pulse of his dog. "We did it, buddy," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. The sense of triumph wasn't just personal, it was almost universal. It was a victory for all who have faced the subtle, creeping audacity of those who assume their power is limitless. Here, in this small suburban driveway, justice had been restored, not with anger, not with brute force, but through loyalty, timing, and courage. That night, as Mike sat back on the porch, Rocky at his side, he reflected on the unexpected inspiration the evening had provided. Courage, he realized, is not always loud or reckless. Sometimes it is quiet, calculated, and unwavering. Determination and loyalty, whether in a person or a companion animal, could protect what matters most and remind the world that principle and vigilance are never outdated. The shadows lengthened, the sun dipped below the horizon, but Mike's sense of clarity and empowerment remained bright. He had witnessed firsthand how resolve, combined with the unwavering support of a trusted ally, could overcome audacity and fear. From that day forward, Mike carried a renewed belief in the strength of loyalty and the power of steadfastness. He understood in a deeply personal way that protecting what is right does not require recklessness, but it does demand courage,
patience and unwavering conviction. In the quiet aftermath, as the neighborhood returned to its usual calm, Mike smiled, feeling a profound sense of inspiration, even amidst bureaucracy, misunderstanding, and audacity. He had seen the triumph of dedication and vigilance. Rocky rested at his feet, still alert, the embodiment of everything Mike had learned that evening. Sometimes the strongest defense comes not from rules or authority, but from loyalty, courage, and determination. And with that, Mike Harper knew that he would never face the world feeling powerless again.